It is time for This Week in Lakeville Journal. And we don't have Cynthia this week, but we do have Janet. Good morning, Janet.
Good morning.
Good morning. I have to say that getting you all set up was a much less arduous process.
Well, coming into the station this morning, it was one of those mornings where all the computers were, for something malfunctioning. Our compressor out to the AM studio was dead, and
What? Oh my gosh!
it was one of those. It was one of those mornings where, Janet, your day is planned out, and your first 45 minutes are all screwed up, and that ruins the rest of the day's schedule.
Yes. Well, don't let it ruin the rest of the day. As long as everything's fixed now. But,
We'll work it. And I'll remind people that the Lakeville Journal is available, of course, at local news outlets where you normally pick it up. But I always get it now. On top of that, I always get the digital edition, which is just a fantastic edition. It is, and I open up the PDF edition of the paper, so it's like I'm actually reading the paper. You have your choice. I get the digital edition because, like I said, you can open it up, and it's like reading the paper right there on your computer screen.
It is, and it's searchable, and you can zoom in so you can read certain parts of it in larger type if you wish, and it's a great way to read it.
All right, so right off the top, you have a story on the protests against police injustice, which were held in Salisbury, which were put together by young people.
Young people, as is happening so much across the country, and that is encouraging. So we have a story by another young person, Hunter Lyle, who is the brother of a reporter of ours at the Millerton News. And we're trying to cover all of these events that we can. There are others that are coming together now in our small towns. There was one in Millerton yesterday that was very well attended.
There's one coming up in Kent and Cornwall as well.
Cornwall and Great Barrington had one last week. They'll have another this week. It's a moment in our history that is profound, and it is being felt at every level of our society.
And I think these protests are great, especially yesterday when the former defense secretary and also four-star military general Mattis came out and said that this country's in serious trouble if the president of the United States is trying to use armed forces to stop peaceful protesters. He said, and he was right. He said if protesters turn to rioters, then it's the states it's the states that have to deal with that by bringing in their police or their National Guard units. So this is not a story that's going to go away soon, Janet.
It's not going to go away. Let's hope it doesn't, and that we just keep talking about it and find ways to make change. I was particularly moved by Mattis's statement that this is the result of 3 years of immature governing, and that says it all, that he was on the inside seeing what was happening and was willing to say this after when he resigned he would not speak out. Yeah. But this is a moment. So we also have on our front page a letter from our Connecticut State Police, and especially because this is our police force here in the northwest corner, we thought it was important to put their words out there. This is from the Deputy Commissioner and the Commissioner of the State Police, and it's well written and supportive of the protesters. So, we'll see if the actions of the state police moving forward are in line with what the statements are now.
I think this whole thing won't go away until there's a national commission put together of retired police, members of the minority communities, and they find a way to deal with rogue police throughout the country. You figure of 5 to 10% of rogue police, and that sounds like it's minor, but like in New York City, there's 800 police officers. Well, if 5 or 10% of them are rogue, that's anywhere from 400 to 800. It's a problem that has to be solved, and the police want to solve it, as shown by the letter that you have, because there's so many great police officers that do their job properly. The rogue ones put their lives in jeopardy.
That's right, as well as the lives of
Yeah.
citizens they come in contact with. And it's not a small thing because, of course, they have matters of life and death coming before them every day.
Yep.
And they have that power and need to be able to deal with it.
All right, we'll move on from that on the front page. A couple of stories. We'll start off with the Planning and Zoning Commission getting exactly what they wanted, which is control over whether there can be windmill racings at Lime Rock. And what I like about what the Planning and Zoning Commission did here, Janet, is they stated what they did in their suit is separate, really, from. It's not the same thing as what's going on with the Lime Rock residents. They understand what the Lime Rock residents go through, but really this was more of a suit just for the Planning and Zoning Commission.
That's right. This is a decision that came down from the Connecticut Supreme Court on May 22nd, and it came out just saying what you just said. Salisbury Planning and Zoning may regulate auto racing tracks. So Patrick Sullivan has a story on this, and he interviewed all the interested parties, and there are, a bunch of them. And you're right, Planning and Zoning is trying to make the case that they do not have the same interests as the Lime Rock Citizens Council exactly, and they need to start from the beginning again and reevaluate. So we will continue to cover that.
Nice story with David Camp on the front page in a color picture.
That's right. This is a break for this week. It has to do with the Children's Television Workshop and the roots here in the Northwest Corner. Camp has written a book called Sunny Days, The Children's Television Revolution That Changed America, and he is giving a talk on Zoom, of course, on June 12th. We have all the information here. Deb Alexinus wrote this for us, and it's just fascinating. I think that many of our listeners will remember this era when Sesame Street started and what a difference it made for young children and their families across society at that time. And there were many people who were involved with that startup who had homes in the Northwest Corner, and one of them was Robert Hatch, who was our owner and editor for a number of years, from 86 to 95. And one of our owners right now, Al Gottesman, was also part of that group for the Children's Television Workshop. So it's part of our history, and it's part of the history of young education throughout the country.
And what's great about that picture, the dog with David Camp is there. Of course, dog was diagnosed, I think, with cancer about 5 years ago, and wow, it's just that's another nice story looking at that picture, by the way.
It is, and they make the point that you can see him walking the dog around our towns even now, and the dog's doing great, so that is wonderful.
All right, so we've got some wave parades set up and some parades set up in Falls Village for the Lee H. Kellogg School, and Sharon Center School has something set up also for their graduation. And Housatonic's graduation will be at Lime Rock Park.
That's right. We have the story this week. Principal Ian Strever let us know the details of it. They've put it out openly, and it's great that the students will get the opportunity to come together, socially distancing and being responsible, but that's going to be on Sunday, June 21st at 4 p.m. at Lime Rock Park. And, it's a year like no other, but I'm so glad that these students will have the chance to come together.
All right, and speaking about students, a couple of stories here. The Academic Bowl team did very well, and also Salisbury Central School has a great virtual History Day prize. Isn't
it nice to see these briefs on what the students are still doing and how successful they're being with it? Usually we try to be at events covering them, and the students would all be together. But these are ways that students can continue to learn and be a part of these competitions, and they're doing great.
And then you scroll down and find out that the National Honor Society inducted 27 Housatonic students now. That's
right. So we have their names all listed here. Take a look. I'm sure you know some of them or their families or, their moms and dads. And it's exciting. It's an exciting time for them, and we're glad to let our readers know about it.
And I love the page because I was a person that left the area but then came back to the northwest corner to work and start a business in my own area. But our towns, the young people coming back, Katie Shanley, Ben Willis, James O'Brien.
That's right. We had, this was a series that Cynthia and our reporters put together a while ago and have been able to put out there now in the paper. And it's a look at who these people are who are coming back at once they've left and decided this is a good place to live, maybe have families, and they're in-depth interviews with them, and they're fascinating young people.
It was funny because this series interests me because I left and went into radio with the express opinion of coming back sometime in the future.
So you knew it. That's interesting.
And starting a radio station. And when I found out years later, while still working in radio, that as frequency was going to open up in the Sharon area, I was lucky enough to be able to come back and actually start that radio station along with Jill Goodman. So
right.
It's one of those cycle of life things. That's why I love seeing these stories, because you can go back, go out, get some, and then come back and benefit your own local area. It's a great story.
Yes, and it's so interesting to see how they see their area and why they have come back now and why they like it here. It's great.
All right, moving on. Fiber optic cable is a high-speed internet option in Cornwall.
That's right. This story by Leela Hawken comes out of a remote forum held on Monday, May 18th. It was hosted by Gary Steinkohl and Casey Cook of the Cornwall Association. So this was a very local look at the importance of ways to find high-speed internet to come into Cornwall, which is an underserved area. And we know that very well at the paper, that we talk about people being able to look at the digital edition, but there are too many of our readers who don't have that access to be able to do that, and it's really a problem that needs to be solved now. So it's an interesting discussion they had. Give that a read.
And you also have, as we just found out with the coronavirus, the need for these Zoom and Google connections, because if people can't check on their grandparents or can't stay in touch with their parents, it's an important option. So it's going to be interesting how our area of Cornwall and other areas that don't have great internet service will move forward on this, and how quickly they can move forward on it.
Right.
Falls Village, once again, that little town, every once in a while they get that whacking hit from the Region 1 budget just because of really peculiar situations.
Right. This is one of those years, and so, they knew it was coming. The selectmen have kept their regular budget to a minimum to try to deal with this, and First Selectman Henry Todd has said that the town has a general fund, a balance of about $520,000. He said it was likely the town would have to use that surplus in 20 and 21. It's an important time for Falls Village. Anyone who's interested should give Patrick Sullivan's story a read. He has a lot of details in there.
We know the Sharon budget was passed, and also the North Canaan budget got the nod. It's just strange this year because people can participate by remote, but basically these budgets have gone through a lot easier than one would think, and people have accepted the fact that they can't go to those meetings, but they can Zoom in.
That's right, and it seems easier to us. I don't know if it was easier for the people, the boards of finance and the selectmen. I think that North Canaan kept their mill rate to the same as it is this year, which is good, and the towns are all working on that. But it's really important this year for everybody to keep an eye on it, so that if anything happens that they don't agree with, once all of this is over and next budget season, we are able to participate, they should do that.
And you got a story on a meeting about coming together and get some progress on the Housatonic Railroad spraying on the railroad tracks. This
is such an important issue for the people who live along the railroad tracks and near these areas, because it's dangerous to have this spraying done close to where areas are populated. So this is a good discussion that the Board of Selectmen had on May 19th, and First Selectman Gordon Ridgway said they had participated in a conference call with our state representatives and the DOT, and they just feel as if there's nothing left to spray on the rail bed. So this is what they're talking about here.
All right, and you've got the story on the Wave Parade for Sharon Center School, which will take place on June 9th as well.
Which is such a great solution, to the issue of what do we do to recognize these kids' efforts. And so this should be fun. Be sure to come out. It's on June 9th, rain date June 10th, expected to start at 6:15.
All right, let's go to the opinion pages and the viewpoint pages. Guest commentary by Gretchen Gordon.
Which is so moving. Please do read this one this week. It's very personal, and it's talking about the repercussions of the murder of George Floyd, and the headline says it all. What will it take to understand we are all the same?
And then Peter Steiner's cartoon. I'll just say there's plundering and pillaging going on, and one plunderer and pillager says, however, when I want to do real damage, I reach for Twitter.
That's right. And so, it's quite the image, and especially in light of the president's clearing out peaceful protesters with the military this week. It was as if Peter had a premonition, and that's often the case.
And you also have some letters this week in the Journal?
Quite a few, yeah. We certainly do. We have the Faltoffs talking about education costs being too high in Falls Village, as we were just talking about. And we have a wonderful piece that Rosa Rudofsky wrote about the usual Memorial Day celebration, specifically in Salisbury, but this could apply to any of our towns around here, and how she spent it this year and what it meant to her. And so that's a good one to read, too. And we have the president of the board of directors of Music Mountain, David Conte, talking about the court decision on Lime Rock Park and what it means to the musicians at Music Mountain.
All right, and your editorial on Lime Rock Park, and also time for national change.
That's right. These are two topics we thought were too important to ignore this week, and so this is what we are writing about. By all means, give them a read and write us letters or let us know if you have further thoughts on them.
And turning back to pages 100 years ago today, I like this. Mr. and Mrs. Lee Dufour motored to Mount Washington last Thursday.
Yes. And can you imagine what that trip was then? Oh, my gosh.
I can't. Motoring to Mount Washington. I don't know if they went up a road at Mount Washington, but even now, going to Mount Washington when weather's bad is...
Yeah, even when the weather's good, it's quite a daunting task. So, yeah, that's they certainly conjure up pictures of what life was like then, and they're great fun that Norma Galais pulls together for us.
What's great about your letters, and there's a lot of them, they range from thanking the ambulance squad, a tribute to the meaningful tradition. Also, you've got pandemic letters, and also people writing about the court decision. I mean, it's nice when you get that many letters in.
Right. We also have a letter from Mark Godburn asking for more information on Lakeville Journal Company's loan, the PPP loan. We did write about this already, and we will again, of course, when we see how it's all turned out, because those 8 weeks, you just don't know what's going to end up happening. But we're glad to get those letters that criticize us, as well as the ones that talk about what's happening in our communities at this time. And also we have Dick Ollis, by the way, talking about Biden choosing a VP candidate and how he should look at the Rhode Island governor. A very interesting piece. I don't know how many of our readers are familiar with her.
All right. I'll put in one comment about we're a nonprofit. You are a private company. We have to put up our tax returns every year. We have to post them so people can see them very easily and see what we're doing, how we're doing. and the money we get in, the money we don't get in, the money that we do from underwriting. It is all there for people. But I have to explain to people, when you're a private company, you don't have to post that information. That's information that's totally different. And the PPP loans, we don't know. At the time, they extended the time now. It was going to be right after the first initial period that you either had to pay back or got it as an actual grant. But that timeline has now been extended. So that's one portion that you can't answer. We don't know, and you don't know, whether it's going to be a loan or whether it's going to be granted as actually a grant. We won't find out that yet until another couple of weeks when everybody sends in their what they've done with the money. So
that's right. The requirements and regulations around what can be forgiven and what would not be forgiven changed after we applied for the loans, and they keep changing. So, that's exactly it. It's a moving target, and we're trying to keep track of it and keeping all our records straight and all that. But it's we'll see what happens.
It's a quagmire, and as soon as it's all figured out, everybody will be able to post that information. Right. Okay, let's go to Compass and just wrap it up in Compass.
Sure. Cynthia found an interesting story about poetry at this time, which can be such a comfort to people at difficult times. So she spoke with Alice Quinn from Millerton, New York, who was thinking about her poet friends and called them and was amazed at the volume of work they were putting together. So she came up with the idea of putting together a fast turnaround published book of their poetry together in A Sudden Strangeness. America's poets respond to the pandemic, and so she is one who will be benefiting the Hotchkiss Library of Sharon with a Zoom talk. So, by all means, connect with them. Their reading will be Tuesday, June 16th, and all the information is there. We also have a story on the Sharon Playhouse, and the people there had been hoping to have a small part of their season, and now they have announced that they've decided to just move the whole season forward by 1 year. But managing director Robert Levenstein and artistic director Alan Wager assure us that this does not mean the Playhouse will be dark this summer, that they have other events planned in the patio bar in July, and of course that's all outdoors, and they will find ways to entertain the community.
That's that's a tough way. These places are finding very interesting things to do very quickly. Like Sharon Playhouse wants to do things in the parking lot and their outside cafe,
right?
And the Shakespeare and Company has just applied so they can put up a big screen and they can show movies beginning up there. To bring people in. The screen is going to be 25 feet high and 50 feet wide if they get the permission to. So very interesting times, and the Sharon Playhouse, Berkshire, Shakespeare and Company, everybody trying to put something together.
And they're figuring it out. It's sort of interesting.
Right. People are finding their creativity and finding ways to get it out there. So that is great.
What is that old one? Necessity is the mother of invention.
Right. And, that's how things happen, and sometimes things can change for the better, even in the middle of a crisis.
All right. Well, that is This Week in the Lakeville Journal. We remind people it's available online, tricornernews.com, and it's also available in a newspaper edition, home delivery. You can pick it up at various locations. Janet, we'll speak to you next week.
Yes, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you
take
so
care.
much.
That is This Week in the Lakeville Journal here on Robin Hood Radio, robinhoodradio.com.